Hi guys, I just wanted to go over some of the things that we talked about in class regarding the MLA rules and formatting. We're going to breeze through this first lesson because I don't think that's probably where most of your questions are. Obviously, if you need to look at this a little more closely, this PowerPoint is also on my website. It just goes over the paper margins, how to do the spacing for the page numbers, and I just wanted to reiterate that you won't need a title page. Here's a sample heading. Again, you can look this up on your own. All right, so primarily I want to talk about the in-text parenthetical citations and sort of how to go about finding how to cite your particular source, because a lot of this is about knowing where to find the information and knowing that you need to cite it. That's really, really important. So make sure that you have clear, accurate citations of outside sources. It's essential and required. That MLA recommends this system of in-text citations, which I'll talk about in a second. That the source is introduced by a single phrase that names the author. And that's what we've been practicing in class from September on, is to include the author and use a bio tag, because in most cases the bio tag will reaffirm credibility. So if the name is not recognizable, as in most cases it won't be, you want to add a tag. You know, are they a researcher for Harvard University? Are they the head of a pediatric department at UC Berkeley? You know, whatever the case may be. Variations on an MLA sources depend on the type of source you have. That's why there's no one singular rule or even a small set of rules. It's going to be really dependent on your particular source and what information is available, which I'll talk about in a second. So for examples of all these, the packet that I'm going to keep referring to is this packet. It looks like this. Notice the first square on there, MLA's rules and formatting. This obviously is the part that goes over the PowerPoint, but let me pause for a second here. Remember that this packet also has attached this content, see, use of attributive tags, and it goes on for several pages. So when I'm telling you to go refer back to this and use this as a resource, this is what I'm talking about. All right, so let's talk about the example with the attributive tag, okay? So like I said before, MLA suggests that you use the attributive tag. It's encouraged by MLA because it signals to the reader credibility, because you're citing your source, you're showing that what the experts say or what the data says and where you got it from. Remember, a big part of research is using reliable and credible sources. So it is to your advantage to cite and make it clear to the reader that you have accurate, up-to-date information. So your academic templates, again, will help you with phrasing. So go back to the previous packet, the one that we did the Friday before this particular lesson, the one on structure, and I've attached academic templates that will help you to kind of reveal what the author is saying and convey to your reader if you have phrasing issues. But most of you should be pretty proficient at this because we practice it so much. So again, remember, it enhances the credibility. So here are some examples. These are the ones that I went over in class, and there's some on some subsequent slides. In this particular PowerPoint, I have added a few examples that I didn't show in class, mainly because I wanted to give you a little more, a few more examples to show you how many variations there are. So this particular example, it says legal scholar. Remember, there's the bio tag, J. Keeson, and then he points out that blah, 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 blah. Notice the end where it says 312, that stands for the page number. In this case, because we use the author in the text, We don't have to put the author in the endnote citation. You only have to put a page number. If there is no page number, then you don't have to put the page number if it's not available. But remember, that needs to coordinate with your works cited. So in other words, if your works cited shows a page reference, then you better have it in your in-text parenthetical citation. So here's the works cited. So this is the part I was talking about. See, it shows that there is a page reference. So if, for example, you were to list this without the page number, and then the reader would look at your works cited, they'd be like, uh-oh, where did this information come from? This is a pretty big gap. I need to know where this information came from. So let me go through another example. So just look at the purple little square there to kind of give you the insight to that particular example. It says, a July 2000 Time Magazine article verifies. Now, there is the attributive tag. They chose not to use the author, but to use the title Time, because that's a recognizable periodical. So Time is the title. And then they also noted the date, July 2000. And so because the author, in this case there are two authors, Mr. Gary and Mr. Sachs, because they were not noted in the text, they then must be included at the end of the information. And again, remember that in-text parenthetical citation is part of the text, meaning inside the period. So you want to include it. MLA says for placement, it should be as close to the information as possible where there is a natural break. So you never want to do it mid-sentence. You'd always want to do it at the end of a sentence or a grouping of sentences, at a paragraph, wherever you think it best demonstrates and links to the information you've cited. Number 2, the New York Times article, Common Sense Makes Common Sense, remarks. Okay, so there's the attributive tag. Again, the author isn't used. So the author is Mr. Phillips. So you can see that we've used Phillips at the end, but there is no page reference, which means there's no page to cite. So again, you need to put it at the end. So this last example, they do use the author's name, Thomas Hendricks, Pediatric Department at UCLA. So again, a good bio tag, that's something to remember. They've also included the source, the New England Journal of Medicine. It's always a good idea. If you have a really impressive journal to cite, you should use it. So the author noted, again, only need to cite page numbers. So that's why there's just a 14 at the end. So remember, all variations are modeled in the packet. Okay, see using attributive tags and using parenthetical citations in your MLA writing workshop guide. So just to kind of show this to you one more time, here's it says, see where it says using attributive tags. So that's on page 3 in your packet. And then if you flip the page, okay, you see it says using parenthetical citations. That's on page 4. And notice, even though it's kind of messy, I want this by my computer at all times. So when you're writing, you're going to need to reference this. There's also a lot of tips, like here, guidelines for using attributive tags effectively. So those are things that you can read over on your own. So we talked about variations. There's so many variations. So again, your MLA packet, where I pointed out, is full of them. If you turn to page 6 in your packet, you'll notice that it talks about all the variations. So let me show you. About halfway down, right there, says variations. So there are some basic standard format, like I've modeled for you in the previous slides, but again, you can't predict how many types of sources that you're going to see, and I can't predict, all my students, all the variations, and so that's why your resource is really, really important. So These are some of the titles. I'm not going to go into modeling every single one, but these are the models that are included in the packet. So if you face this problem, when a citation information appears in a attributive tag, that's what I've just modeled. So you should be pretty clear on that one. But again, if you need to go look at a visual example, or when you must quote indirectly. So let's say Lisa Miller has quoted another expert. Well, MLA says you should go to that original source, but if in the event that you can't, she gives you an example of what to do. So if you look really quick here, see, it looks like this, quoted in, and then it shows the source and the page number. So that's what we mean by there's so many variations. When an article has only one page or page numbers are unavailable, okay? So many of you are probably going to face this problem. So it gives you a couple different scenarios and examples. You just need to look that up. When paragraph numbers are available. In your case, that happens quite a bit because a lot of our class sources have been numbered. So you can see here, up here, there's an example of that. Okay, that's in your packet on page 7. Here's another example. When a work has more than one author. Okay, and this is, again, going to pop up from time to time. So, again, how do you do that? So the first one here shows you 2 authors, and that I had modeled for you before. The second one shows you 3 authors. And then what happens if there's more than 3? Notice how that's used. Again, that will describe to you here the rationale behind it and how to set it up. When a paper has more than one source by one author, I explained in class, it's very possible. We have 2 by Mark Bittman. We have 2 by Jamie Oliver. If you happen to use both those sources, then how are you going to know which one to use? So again, if you go back to the packet, this is on page 7, you'll see here, right, that you're going to have to include the first word of the article title, okay, or the speech title in our case. So those are things that you want to read over carefully before you start citing. When 2 authors have the same surname, okay, it's possible. Johnson, Smith, Miller even. Those are pretty common names and you might come across them more than once. So it also talks about proper placement for MLA in text citations. I kind of talked about that a few minutes ago, but you might want to read the last section of the pages provided in that packet.